program. With infections rising dramatically and genome sequencing still to catch up, the government is now assuming community transmission of the highly contagious Omicron variant, as 3 provinces near Metro Manila also raised the alert level by a notch. The girl who skipped quarantine to party in Poblacion in Makati now facing criminal complaints along with 8 others for allegedly violating health protocols. And the Philippine Olympic Committee vowing to support pole vaulter EJ Obiena while his sports association moves to drop him from the national team. The Health Department moving as if there is already community transmission of the more infectious Omicron COVID-19 variant. Health spokesperson Maria Rosario Vergere says definitive evidence is still needed before issuing a formal declaration, but she points out the signs are there.
We are doing random and explosive sampling because we have this limitation. But for now, we are now assuming that Omicron is in our communities, and we are having this transmission within our communities already. According to our experts in the other countries, the cases doubled every 2 days in other countries, and that is what we are seeing right now. And the assumption is there, Omicron is in our communities already.
To date, we have 14 confirmed cases of the new variant. 3 were found locally, while the other 11 from returning overseas Filipinos. But Vergere says there are initial projections that infections driven by Omicron will peak at the end of this month, but did not disclose exact figures. From August to September last year, cases hit more than 20,000 per day during the surge fueled by the Delta variant. The spike caused by Omicron, however, is seen to surpass that figure. Now, So what do we know so far about the characteristics of Omicron? The Health Department says it is 8 times more transmissible than Delta. Vergere tells CNN Philippines symptoms caused by the new variant may appear in 2 to 3 days earlier than the 5-day incubation period for Delta. Based on studies overseas, Omicron is only causing mild illnesses so far, but experts warn it is spreading at an unprecedented rate. Now, that is why we must not let our guards down and continue to wear masks, observe physical distancing, practice proper hand hygiene, and only go out if necessary. Now, the country's case tally tops 5,000 today, the first time in more than 2 months. The Health Department logged 5,434 new cases, pushing the total count to over 2,800,000. Of the new infections, more than 99% occurred in the past 2 weeks. Nearly 3/4 of them were in Metro Manila. The positivity rate rose to 26.2%, meaning more than 1/4 of the people being tested have positive results. Today's tally excludes data from 16 laboratories which failed to submit their reports on time. The country's top cop also testing positive for the coronavirus. National Police Chief General John R. Carlos announces he, along with his driver and aide, caught COVID-19. Carlos had fever, chills, and sweating on Sunday, but by Monday, only lower back pains remain. Emergency room and hospital admissions going up in Metro Manila by half in just a week as more people catch the coronavirus. What should you do if you are exposed to a COVID patient or get infected as well? Carolyn Bonkin walks us through the government's recent guidelines.
If you've been exposed to a COVID-infected person, even for just a few seconds, you're considered a close contact. Based on the Health Department's latest guidelines, you need to quarantine for 7 days if fully vaccinated. If not, it will be for 14 days from exposure. Regardless of COVID test results, you have to complete the quarantine period.
Ang atin pong mga DOH, ang atin pong cluster po ng National Task Force, nagbibigay po tayo ng libreng testing kits sa ating mga local governments. Meron din po tayong PhilHealth benefit.
RT-PCR and antigen testing must be supervised by healthcare professionals. For those taking antigen test, a positive result means you likely have COVID. If negative but symptomatic, you need to isolate and get an RT-PCR test. If you're a close contact but asymptomatic, you have to be tested on the 5th day with RT-PCR. If you were not exposed and have no symptoms, then an antigen test is unreliable.
Dapat tama po yung test nyo and tama po ang timing ng inyong pagtetest para po mas maging accurate ang atin pong mga resulta. Kapag tayo ay may simptomas, dyan po pinaka-accurate ang resulta ng ating antigen test.
Regardless of vaccination status, if you tested positive but have mild, moderate, or no symptoms, you need to isolate for 10 days. During this period, the DOH says you're still infectious. Consult your doctor as soon as you test positive.
Protect our family, protect our community from this virus, from further spreading by isolating immediately.
If your symptoms are severe or critical, isolation will last for 21 days and you must be admitted to a hospital. While asymptomatic and mild cases may stay at home or in a temporary treatment and quarantine facility. Rest, drink lots of water, eat healthy, and drink maintenance medicines. You may also take medicines for fever. A health department reminder: antibiotics are not effective against COVID. Monitor yourself and, if possible, with the help of a healthcare provider. Watch out for danger signs like breathing difficulty, chest pain or tightness, confusion, difficulty in speaking or moving. Here are the DOH hospital hotlines for emergencies and telemedicine consultations. They may be accessed online or through the phone.
Meron po tayong mga telemedicine services, meron po tayong hotlines ng ating local government health facilities para ito na lang muna po ang ating gamitin para hindi tayo mag-congest sa ating mga ospital.
Considered recovered are asymptomatics who remain without symptoms for 10 days from testing date, and mild, severe, and critical cases with no symptoms and clinically recovered for 3 days. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
The health department says 100,000 tests should be conducted per day, instructing laboratories to operate 24/7 if they can. In today's tally, based on reports from January 2nd, only around 25,000 people were tested. Now, the surge in cases also prompting the government to place more areas back under restrictions. Beginning tomorrow until January 15, Malacanang says Bulacan, Cavite, and Rizal will also revert to Alert Level 3, citing a sharp increase in infections in these provinces. Metro Manila returned to the same alert level yesterday. Under this classification, face-to-face classes and contact sports are prohibited, and operational capacities for some establishments are scaled down. Travel, meanwhile, is subject to local government restrictions. The coronavirus is also spreading rapidly among rail line personnel and ports employees. As Amor Santos tells us, over 200 of them are now positive.
As commuters get back to work after the holiday season, frontline government workers get tested to ensure the riding public safety. Out of more than 200 MRT3 personnel, 40 tested positive in their antigen tests taken Monday. At the Philippine National Railways, 45 more operating personnel tested positive Tuesday morning. This brings the tally to 128, including 83 office workers. All of them do not have symptoms according to PNR management.
Naka-isolate po sila ngayon sa kanilang mga bahay. Tapos po yung mga empleyado po namin na nagpahayag na yung kanilang pong bahay ay maliit o marami silang kahalubilo mga may bata at matanda, nire-refer po natin sa kanilang mga LGU for isolation.
At the Philippine Ports Authority, 45 employees also had positive antigen test results. PPA General Manager Jay Santiago says they will take RT-PCR tests after 5 days to confirm COVID-19 infection. This could be done earlier if symptoms show up. Antigen testing also kicked off for LRT employees.
So far naman, based naman doon sa regular na COVID monitoring namin as of January 1, dalawa lang yung positive namin doon sa aming regular na monitoring. So we will see later on kapag natapos natin lahat itong antigen testing natin.
And soon, a random testing for commuters.
Yes, that's also true. The MRT will be conducting, not only the MRT, the rail system in MRT, LRT 1, LRT 2, and PNR will be conducting random testing, antigen testing for their passengers. These are only for those who are willing or who volunteer for the antigen testing.
Under Alert Level 3, public utility vehicles are allowed up to 70% operating capacity. Commuters are required to wear face masks. No talking, no phone calls, and no eating to prevent the transmission of the virus inside PUVs. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
2 weeks before Congress resumes session, the House of Representatives goes on lockdown because of the threat of Omicron. House Secretary General Mark Leandro Mendoza says on-site operations will resume next week. Over at the Senate President Tito Soto sees no need to lock down just yet, but suspends hearings scheduled tomorrow. The Supreme Court also adjusting this year's bar exams. Instead of holding it for 4 Sundays, the court is cutting it down to just 2 days on January 23 and 25, which fall on a Sunday and a Tuesday. The court strongly urging examinees to self-quarantine beginning January 9th. They will be required to undergo antigen and swab tests 48 hours before the exams, and those testing positive will be barred from exam centers. Up ahead on News 9, authorities pressing charges against the so-called Poblacion girl and several others, including her parents. And some pharmaceutical companies and groups report a shortage of paracetamol brands, but the health department says there is still enough supply of the medicine. More on that when we return. Stay tuned.
Linsky General Merchandise, San Pedro District, Pagadian City, at bang sa balay sa mga pawaran kaniadto na maligya sa mga makina o piyesa sa mga nagkalain-laing sakyanan, sama sa Dan-wheeler, forward, elf, bungo ug daghan pang uban. Tag-iya ug tagdumala mao si Madam Arlene Solihon Fernandez ug si handsome boy Jesse Fernandez, ang pinakailado nga surplus center sa Pagadian City, Zamboanga del Sur. Linsky General Merchandise.
Libre ko San Miguel Beer, basta akin ang tansan. Tansan? Sa San Miguel Oktoberfest Instant GCash Panalo Promo, uulan ng up to 100 million pesos in GCash prizes. Buy any San Miguel Beer, hanapin ang code sa crown. Kung meron, panalo ka! Iscan ang QR code sa mga posters at Facebook. I-type ang code and win! Sali na! Available in areas where allowed. See posters for full details. Promo runs from September 1 to December 31, 2021. Per DOH FDA CFR Permit Number 0424 Series of 2021. Drink responsibly. Tandaan, laging i-check ang ilalim ng tansan kung may winning code. Drink responsibly.
Ringo Honasan po. Sa pagbangon ng mga Pilipino, saludo ako sa mga taong patuloy na humaharap sa hamon ng pagbabago.
Bilang sundalo, tinataya ko ang aking buhay para sa ating kapayapaan.
Sa panahon ng pandemya, kami ang patuloy na humaharap sa frontline 24 oras.
Kaming mga guro ang gumagabay sa edukasyon ng mga kabataan.
Sa panahon ng krisis, ikaw, ako, magtulungan tayo. Ringo Honasan po. Saludo ako sa Pilipino.
Loren Legarda po. 18 years akong senador at nagsulong ng mga batas na nakakatulong sa mga nangangailangan. Free college education law. Para sa aming edukasyon. MSME law. Batas para sa aming kabuhayan. Climate Change Act. Mga batas para sa kalikasan at climate change. Mga batas na ginawa ko na napapakinabangan ngayon. Sana makatulong pa ako sa mas marami. Loren Legarda.
This is a paid advertisement.
DXKP Pagadian, ang inyong Radyo Ronda RPN. Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world, pinaagi sa FB page, karon mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play o Apple Store, YouTube o Twitter. Alang sa mas ipakuskan yung mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran o kalingawan. Ang mas ipakuskan nga inyong Radyo Ronda.
Facility within Metro Manila after testing positive for COVID-19 on December 26th. The Interior Department said 7 out of her 15 close contacts also tested positive. While the country's healthcare utilization rate is still considered low risk despite rising COVID-19 cases, hospitals are now beefing up measures against a potential surge in patients.
It's the rush
Efforts
hour.
are underway to make more beds
check.
and facilities
This is the traffic
available,
center
even
on
as the health
CNN
department
Philippines.
notes hospital capacity has not yet reached 50%.
The IATF has started preparing. We started mobilizing our teams para po yung ating mga ospital makapag-stockpile ng gamot, expand the number of beds. Ayun pong ating local governments, we met with them already so that they can intensify the response in the community. Ang pinaka-importante, we have activated our telemedicine services in all of our hospitals. We are encouraging all of our citizens, kapag mild ang symptoms natin, let's use telemedicine. Do not go to the hospitals yet. Let's preserve our hospitals for our severe and critical cases.
Would like to pursue further is to intensify our prevention, detection, and isolation for these positive patients, and definitely also the compliance of the minimum health standards, because this is the only way that we can lessen the transmission.
The Health Secretary says there are 5,000 COVID-19 patients currently confined in hospitals. These patients are a mix of mild, moderate, severe, and critical cases. The Health Department is saying paracetamol supply is enough, even as some brands run out on the shelves amid rising COVID-19 cases. Unilab says some of its brands are out of stock in select drugstores because of extraordinary demand. The company notes it is working to replenish supply as soon as possible. Unilab is the manufacturer of BioFlu, Neozep, and Solmux. The Vice President of the Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Association of the Philippines says there is a temporary shortage of certain paracetamol brands in some areas. She appeals to everyone not to hoard medicine. The DOH is now urging people consider buying generic brands instead. The agency notes paracetamol has many alternatives in the market. Now, the controversial Dolomite Beach in Manila Bay has reopened to fully vaccinated individuals. Rex and Media tells us how the first day of its reopening turned out in light of the rising COVID-19 cases in Metro Manila.
Despite drawing flack for the supposedly untimely project done in the middle of a raging pandemic, the government reopens to the public the controversial Dolomite Beach in Manila Bay. Some visitors don't mind that the beach is artificial, as they enjoy posing for snapshots under the sun. A few even came from nearby provinces, just like 86-year-old Patricia Valenzuela from Bulacan.
Hindi ko na kailangan pala magpunta sa Boracay. Ito pa ng Boracay, dinala na sa Manila. Ako naman po yung nag-iingat. Kanya po kami hindi sumabay sa mga karamihan.
A number of visitors notice that the water is clearer, far from its murky condition years back.
Parang hindi mo maisip na nasa Manila Bay ka. Nag-iba yung ano niya, yung appearance niya. Kung punong-puno, hindi naman kami papasok.
Swimming is not yet allowed despite better water quality. Water is still heavily contaminated, and unhealthy particles that may cause illnesses should be reduced by a substantial amount for the area to be cleared for swimming. Fisherfolk group Pamalakaya has a different view about the project. It says the Environment Department shouldn't have reopened the beach, and money for the project should have been spent for cash aid for poor families suffering from the pandemic. The group adds the project puts public health at risk. The DNR says visitors are limited at certain time slots and they must be fully vaccinated. They also have to register online a day ahead of the visit. Walk-ins are allowed depending on available slots. Visitors can only stay on the beach for an hour on 4 time slots in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. Rex Remitio, CNN Philippines.
The Commission on Elections is set to tackle on Wednesday the petition to reopen the filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 polls. The PDP Laban faction, led by Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, had made that appeal more than 2 months after the filing of COCs ended last October 8th. The group also asked the poll body to delay the printing of ballots while petitions against certain aspirants remain unresolved. Comlic described the group's request as unprecedented.
It's a little tricky. This question, because there are a lot of issues involved in it. There's a lot of kumbaga, consequences to opening up the COC filing once again.
The PDP Laban faction had initially fielded Senators Bato de la Rosa and Bongo as president and vice president, but both eventually withdrew from the race. A group called the National Coalition for Life and Democracy is insisting on postponing the May 9 polls to 2025 in the face of rising COVID-19 cases and the threat of the Omicron variant. Its lawyers filed an urgent request before the COMELEC to decide on their proposal. They say early campaign activities of 2022 aspirants put Filipino voters at risk. However, the poll body is unlikely to budge.
And if you're saying that the Constitution should be ignored simply because you want to stay in power, then you have a big problem. The COMELEC sees no reason to postpone the election.
Nung final namin ito, tinatawanan ng grupo namin. Pero ano, ang nangyari ngayon, December, ang COVID record sa Metro Manila was only 500. With all the campaignings, with all the actions being done illegally, contrary to AITF rules and regulations, kampanya rito, motorcade dito.
COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez also commends politicians who've been putting their campaign activities on hold and asked others to follow suit. Whole body is sticking to campaign rules which kick in by February, limiting what candidates can do depending on the alert level classification in an area. At least 4 presidential aspirants have put campaign activities on hold amid increasing COVID-19 cases, which also hit a number of their staff. Vice President Leni Robredo said they will use this time to give aid to typhoon victims, while the Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte tandem led volunteers to distribute medicines to hospitals. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno and Senator Manny Pacquiao also postponed campaign events. We'll have the latest on this year's elections from the push to reopen the filing of COCs to disqualification cases against presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos. Catch my interviews with COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez and Senator Amy Marcos tonight on Politics as Usual at 8:30, your weekly political appointment fix. Straight ahead on Newsnight, pole vaulting sensation EJ Obiena is in danger of being removed from the national team after a recommendation from the Athletics Track and Field Association. And an update on the 3 BTS members who tested positive for the coronavirus. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
Ringo Honasan po. Sa pagbangon ng mga Pilipino, saludo ako sa mga taong patuloy na humaharap sa hamon ng pagbabago.
Bilang sundalo, tinataya ko ang aking buhay para sa ating kapayapaan.
Sa panahon ng pandemya, kami ang patuloy na humaharap sa frontline 24 oras.
Kaming mga guro ang gumagabay sa edukasyon ng mga kabataan.
Sa panahon ng krisis, ikaw, ako, magtulungan tayo. Ringo Honasan po. Saludo ako sa Pilipino.
Libre ko San Miguel Beer, basta akin ng Tansan. Tansan? Sa San Miguel Oktoberfest Instant GCash Panalo Promo, uulan ng up to 100 million pesos in GCash prizes. Buy any San Miguel Beer, hanapin ang code sa crown. Kung meron, panalo ka! Iscan ang QR code sa mga posters at Facebook. I-type ang code and win! Sali na! Available in areas where allowed. See posters for full details. Promo runs from September 1 to December 31, 2021. Per DOH FDA CFR permit number 0424 series of 2021. Drink responsibly. Tandaan, laging i-check ang ilalim ng Tansan kung may winning code. Drink responsibly.
Loren Legarda po. 18 years akong senador at nagsulong ng mga batas na nakakatulong sa mga nangangailangan. Free college education law. Para sa aming edukasyon. MSME law. Batas para sa aming kabuhayan. Climate Change Act. Mga batas para sa kalikasan at climate change. Mga batas na ginawa ko na napapakinabangan ngayon. Sana makatulong pa ako sa mas marami. Loren Legarda.
This is a paid advertisement. DXKP Pagadian, ang inyong Radyo Ronda RPM. Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world, pinaagi sa FB page, karon mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play o Apple Store, YouTube o Twitter. Alang sa mas ipakuskan ng mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran o kalingawan. Ang mas ipakuskan ng inyong Radyo Ronda.
Dropping Olympic pole vaulter EJ Obiena from the team pool effective immediately. Alongside this is a recommendation for an estafa complaint against the athlete over funding for coaching fees amounting to about 360,000 pesos. Philippine Olympic Committee President Bambol Tolentino said they will make sure Obiena gets to compete in all major global tournaments. Last week, the POC declared Patafa chief Philip Wico persona non grata over allegations he made against Obiena on falsifying liquidation reports. Also making the rounds on social media, Chris Aquino announcing the end of her relationship with former Interior Secretary Mel Sarmiento. Celebrities left messages of support for the actress. On her Instagram post, Chris posted Mel's text messages saying he experienced bubble fatigue while staying indoors to protect her from the virus. Chris also talked about seeking treatment for her autoimmune disease and asked for privacy at this time. The two first announced their engagement in October. Good news for K-pop fans. BTS members RM, Jin, and Suga have fully recovered from COVID-19. Suga finished quarantine on Monday, while RM and Jin followed a day after. The three tested positive following their arrival in South Korea from the U.S. after concerts in Los Angeles. The group's agency said RM and Suga were asymptomatic, and Jin briefly experienced a mild fever. And more news in music. A late rock icon's body of work sells for upwards of $200 million. CNN's David Daniel has that and more on the Hollywood Minute.
David Bowie's estate has sold the publishing rights to the legendary singer's catalog to Warner Chappell. Variety puts the value of the deal at more than $250 million. It covers every song Bowie ever wrote, including those on the posthumous album Toy, which comes out Friday. Bowie would have turned 75 on Saturday. The Weeknd is also putting out new music on Friday, his long-teased album Dawn FM. The artist revealed the release date and a snippet of music in this announcement trailer.
We've been in the dark for way too long. It's time to walk into the light and accept your fate with open arms.
They must represent all of us.
Whoopi Goldberg now represents a growing group, celebs who've tested positive for COVID-19. Her co-host on The View, Joy Behar, made the announcement on Monday's episode, saying since she's vaxxed and boosted, her symptoms have been very, very mild, but we're being super cautious. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
People with jobs that require standing for long periods of time have a higher risk of developing varicose veins. But so are jobs that entail sitting all day. That's because both situations put excessive pressure on your legs, causing your veins to stop working properly and even swell, resulting in those bulging blue or purple veins on your legs. Now, most of the time, these are simply a cosmetic concern, but for others, they can cause aching pain and discomfort, and maybe other serious complications later on. While there is no way to completely prevent it, self-care can ease the pain and prevent it from getting worse. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We're here to build a healthier future for you. Varicose veins occur when your veins become enlarged, dilated, and overfilled with blood, and they typically appear swollen and raised. To help us with today's discussion, let's welcome our guests. With us is Dr. Angela Pineda. She's a dermatologist and the Executive Vice President of Derm Clinic. Also with us is Dr. Riza Cruz Nagano. She's an adult cardiologist from the Philippine Heart Center and Jose Memorial Medical Center. Now, the primary symptoms of varicose veins are highly visible, misshapen veins that usually appear on someone's legs. I'll start the discussion with Dr. Angela. Now, apart from some of the visible symptoms, what are some other indications that someone might have them?
Well, for us, what we really see are the spider veins. So just the difference between the spider veins and the varicose veins are the spider veins are smaller. These are like very, very small, less than 1.5 millimeters. But those for varicose veins, these are the bigger ones that usually they're 2.5 to 5 millimeters. So what happens when patients come to us, they complain of redness or a visibility of lines on the face or usually most on the legs.
Now, spider veins, katulad sinabi ni Dr. Angela, are a mild variation of varicose veins. They're smaller, found closer to the skin surface, and are often red or blue. And they usually appear on the legs, sometimes on the soles of the feet as well, but they can also be found on the face. Now, Dr. Angela, yung mga spider veins ba na ito, do they pose any significant problems with a person aside from the aesthetic portion of it?
Usually, for those in the legs, they usually appear with varicose veins. So sometimes people would come to us complaining of both the varicose and the spider veins. So we always remind them that we can limit our treatments to the spider veins. We can do superficial treatments for that. But we also recommend that they consult a doctor and have additional tests to make sure that the varicose veins are also treated.
Now, I'll talk about how these varicose veins are diagnosed. Dr. Riza, paano ba usually ina-assess ang isang patient for proper diagnosis of varicose veins?
So very important still is the proper history and physical examination. So during the physical examination, we get the what you call the ankle brachial index. So we get the pressures from the different points of the legs. And then also we get to examine the legs if there are signs of ulcers, ulcerations, the temperature of the skin. So if it is warm to touch, cold to touch, we also check for the pulses. And then another examination that can be done is the ultrasound or the arterial duplex scan.
Now, Dr. Riza, meron bang simple test na pwede gawin ng ating mga viewers sa bahay nila to more or less screen themselves kung baka meron silang mga varicose veins sa legs?
Yes, simple inspection will do because as you can see, these are enlarged vein, very visible through the skin, so they can inspect and then they can touch the involved area, and then they can, like I have said earlier, they can inspect if the area is warm to touch, cold to touch, and then they can check the pulse. If there's a palpable pulse or there's no palpable pulse in the area.
Now, when it comes to risk factors, Dr. Angela, what are some of the risk factors for people developing spider veins or even larger varicose veins?
For risk factors, the first is the family history. Usually you'd see it's either their parents or their relatives already have it very common. Next would be obesity, as well as pregnancy. Sometimes the veins appear more visible when there's pag-pregnant yung babae.
Now, Dr. Riza, when it comes to being pregnant, bakit ito isang risk factor for developing varicose veins?
During pregnancy, the blood volume doubles to provide nourishment for the baby as well as the baby inside the womb. So what happens if there's increased blood volume, it stresses the veins, so there's increased pressure inside and more blood pools inside the vein. And also the pressure brought about by the weight of the baby also adds up to the workload of the vein, so causing more engorgement, more enlargement, and more obvious varicose vein.
Now, Dr. Riza, ano yung mga trabaho na mas nakakapagpataas ng chance ang magkaroon ng varicose veins?
The major risk factor related with jobs that increases the chance of having varicose veins is the lack of movement. So those jobs that entails you to stand for a long period of time or sit for a long period of time would increase the risk. So mainly these are the healthcare professionals like us, doctors, nurses, and cashiers, barbers, hairstylists, and those who sit for a long period of time, like the BPO agents, and those who require to work in front of the computer for a long period of time.
Now, most of the time, this condition doesn't cause any pain, so you tend to just let it be. But what are the possible complications? More on this when we return. We're your connection to healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk. Although somewhat common, varicose veins can cause complications. Now, any condition in which proper blood flow is undermined has a risk of complications. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk. We're together in health. Painful ulcers may form on the skin near varicose veins, particularly around the ankles, and this is called a venous skin ulcer. It's a sore in the leg that's very slow to heal, usually because of weak blood circulation in the limb, and can often be accompanied by other comorbid conditions. Dr. Riza, how can varicose veins cause an ulcer?
So usually the main problem with varicose veins is the pooling of blood, increasing the pressure inside the vein, causing the walls of the vein to weaken as well as the valve to weaken. So also the blood supply of the skin becomes disrupted. So the skin becomes fragile. So even a minor injury like a scratch or a knock would cause an ulcer. And this ulcer doesn't heal up easily because of the problem in the circulation.
Now, Dr. Angela, speaking of the skin, since we're in that area, if there are any wounds of our viewers that do not heal properly or are very slow to heal, what should they think about? What are some of the conditions that they should be thinking about?
Usually for patients with diabetes, you usually see ulcers that are not healing. Also for patients who are not ambulatory or usually bedridden, you'd see the accumulation of ulcers. So as said by Dr. Riza, it's mainly because there's minimal blood flow to that area. So that's why you'd see more visible ulcers.
Now, Dr. Angela, when it comes to varicose veins, one of the more common symptoms of this is masakit ito, so very painful. Are there any topical treatments that are worthy of being used to help with this, or should this be approached in a systemic way?
It should be approached in a systemic way because you'd see the problem superficially, but meron kasi siyang internal concern. So it's more, and usually the pain is associated with throbbing pain, and sometimes there is a feeling of heaviness in the area. So it's something that should really be examined.
So if you have a wound that isn't healing or you think is infected, you should go see a doctor right away. Sometimes an ulcer can lead to other problems, including serious skin and bone infections. Now, most varicose veins are in the superficial veins. So if a blood clot forms, they form there. Now, these veins are located just below the surface of your skin. But occasionally, veins deep within the legs become enlarged and the affected leg may become painful. This may also indicate the presence of a blood clot. Now, Dr. Riza, how do blood clots form, or is there an increased risk of blood clot formation doon sa mga may varicose veins?
Definitely. Since there's pooling of the blood, so there's stasis, the blood doesn't flow in and out of the vein. So it becomes a nidus for the formation of the clot. And this clot can also travel to other area of the body, which can cause embolism or problem to other organs, as it may impede the oxygen supply once it becomes clotted in that area.
So would you advise, Dr. Riza, na those who have varicose veins or who think they have varicose veins, na this is something that should be treated sooner rather than later?
Yes, because this is a circulatory problem. So if you do not manage it, there will only be a cycle of increasing pressure, blood pooling, enlargement of the veins. So something really has to be done to manage those underlying problems.
Okay. Now, Dr. Angela, what treatment options are there? Also with the telangiectatic type or yung mga maninipis na ugat dito sa may cheeks ng ibang tao, are there treatments available for those?
So one traditional and common treatment that's being used is sclerotherapy. So it's using a salt solution enriched that is injected to the spider veins. And then one that's very popular now, it's the laser treatments. So these laser treatments, usually what's done is there's a specific wavelength that's adjusted to machines or to the recent technology that when you apply it, it would take some sessions to be able to minimize or somehow dissolve those spider veins.
Now, Dr. Riza, pag-usapan naman natin yung treatment para doon sa mga mas malalaking varicose veins, especially the ones commonly seen around the leg. Anong usual treatment para dito?
So for those who have large varicose veins and those that doesn't respond to other methods like sclerotherapy or radiofrequency ablation, so another option that we have is the surgical intervention or the vein ligation and stripping.
So, ang importante malaman na ating mga viewers that there are treatment options for any type of varicose veins that you may have, whether it be the spider veins or the bigger varicose veins. Now, varicose veins develop for various reasons, and some of these risk factors, such as family history as well as age, are harder to avoid than others. So, is there a way to prevent varicose veins from forming? Stay with us. Your health is our mission. This is MedTalk Health Talk. Varicose veins can't be completely prevented. However, you can prevent existing varicose veins from worsening. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk, where your care always comes first. You can make lifestyle changes that may keep varicose veins from getting worse and even reduce the pain. One thing you can do is to exercise. This helps the blood move through your veins better. Dr. Angela, aside from these, what else can people do in order to try and prevent their spider veins, for that matter, becoming worse?
So for one basic way is to make movements more frequent. Like for example, we already mentioned that it happens when you're prolonged standing. So we recommend, even for teachers or for those professions who are standing the whole day, we'd recommend that they just move around and they just make subtle changes. And for those who are working, especially now that work from home is very, very common, so we're all always sitting. So we recommend after maybe 30 minutes or so, you change position, adjust your legs. So these are basic treatments that we can do every day so that it would prevent the occurrence of varicose veins.
Our viewers now are working behind the desk for longer periods of time. What can you advise for them? How often should they start moving para hindi tumaas ang risk for forming varicose veins?
Yes, movement is very important. So as long as they have the chance to move and elevate their legs, and I think this most important is to elevate the legs higher than the rest of the body, because this will decrease the pressure inside the vein and would help the blood to move in and out of the vein. So whenever they have the chance, try to move and elevate the legs.
Now, Dr. Riza, one of the common things that our viewers might be familiar about when it comes to varicose veins is yung pagsuot ng compression stockings. How exactly does this help with varicose veins? At pareho ba ito ng ibang klaseng mga stockings na sinusuot every day?
So, compression stockings help counter the pressure inside the vein, helping the circulation of the blood in and out of the vein. So, this can ease the symptoms of leg fullness and the aches associated with varicose veins. So this is different from the usual stockings that we use because there's a certain amount of pressure that is recommended depending on the severity of the varicose veins or if there is leg ulcer. And also it is very important to consult your doctor before using compression stockings because there are some conditions in the legs, some circulatory conditions where compression stocking is not recommended. So instead of doing you good, it might further aggravate your condition.
Now, Dr. Angela, when it comes to treatment for cosmetic purposes ng veins, a lot of people might think that there are some home remedies for this. Is this something safe to undergo, home remedies to treat spider veins, or is it best that people always seek the consult of a doctor?
But I think we can do prevention techniques rather than self-medicate because these things that we're saying, it's more to be able to prevent it from appearing. But if, for example, you already have spider veins, you already have varicose veins, or even leg ulcers, it's best to have consultations, even online, so that at least the doctor will be able to properly assess your condition and give the right recommendations.
Now, Dr. Riza, when it comes to preventing varicosities as well, what can you advise our viewers?
It is very important to maintain a healthy weight because obesity is a major risk factor for developing varicose veins. Also, you should prevent or quit with cigarette smoking, which is also a very important risk factor for developing varicose veins as well as other circulatory problems.
So marami talaga tayong natutunan with this episode today. Thank you very much, dermatologist Dr. Angela Pineda and cardiologist Dr. Riza Cruz Naganyo. Marami pong salamat sa inyo. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk.